The game's up, my boy.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG podcast, and today we're going to be discussing Final Fantasy 15 Episode Ignis. I was actually able to play through it a couple days ago, and then I tried to watch again on YouTube just to get a little bit of a different experience with just the cutscenes, just to see maybe if, without the gameplay, if that kind of changed my mind. And, we'll get into that in a little bit. But before we jump into that, just want to point out that this episode is going to be a little shorter than our normal episodes just because it's a holiday week. We're recording on a normal day that we don't normally record on. And with all that going on, it's just not going to be as easy to do our typical, 2 hour or however long. So we appreciate your understanding with that. Also, if you're checking out other episodes and you look at this one, obviously I got a different background here. I moved, so I'm still getting situated with that. So if anything seems a little off, that's probably why. But other than that, Eric, you're able to check out some Ignis. How did you feel about it?
It's story content that I like to see, but if anyone's been following our episodes, you know my opinion about how 15 is structured and what became of it and the results of it, and then my opinion still stands. It should have been in the main game. This is DLC that clearly has content, a very vital content needed to bring context to the game, and bridging it behind this DLC is like the worst way they could have. I wouldn't say the worst because we're starting to see even worse methods now, but it's definitely not ideal for the Final Fantasy series to keep such vital story content out. And on top of that, in the kind of spoilers territory here, but the non-canon...
Well, first off, before we do jump any further, obviously, if you have not played Episode Ignis and you do not want this to be spoiled, we're going to spoil the crap out of this. So this isn't like, I'm thinking about buying it. Maybe I'll check this video out. After you finish this, there's not going to be anything for you to pay for because we would have spoiled it. So keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, and like the non-canon, like alternate what-if story has like really important like information about Arden in the past and like the Eidolons that we've been wondering about, and that's in a non-canon ending? I don't get it. I don't know why they decided to make it a choice-based like RPG on top of that. It's still kind of baffling to me.
Yeah, so basically they added, at a certain point, Arden asks Ignis, or he says, hey, you can go on with Noctis and Luna, but we all know how that's going to end, basically. So if you want to avoid all that, why don't you just come with me? I think things will be like different or something like that, right? And Ignis is given the choice to either go along or he can fight back. Now, the canon response is to fight back. But if you choose go along, he doesn't really go along. He goes along like, oh, okay, I'm going to like try to be undercover or something like that. And he travels with Arden, and he basically fills in a lot of these holes that we were wondering about Arden, or clarifies these things in greater detail. And I see what you're saying in that, like, this is kind of strange that in like an alternate ending that's not even canon, like we're finding all this stuff out that we want to know. But I just almost wonder if they're doing that just as a response to criticism that,
and they're still not responding to it well. It's the funny thing is that like this is content that Noctis should know. Why is Ignis, a secondary character, the one getting all the sword dump on him?
Yeah, well, okay, you know what? Let's just jump into this because I had a lot of problems with this DLC, and I didn't have problems with all DLC. I thought Episode Gladio, although the story content was kind of disappointing, I thought that generally speaking it was fun to play. So I mean, it wasn't that big of a disappointment. I thought Prompto's gameplay was atrocious, Episode Prompto, but I actually did enjoy the story for the most part, I have to admit. But this episode Ignis, like I really just did not like it. So well, I mean, okay, so like right from the beginning, that I hate when games do this, especially when Final Fantasy 15 does it, when they use like cutscenes from like something else instead of just making something new. So the game starts off with like a bunch of cutscenes from like the Altisha incident, and like I don't know, it just feels cheap. Like it's like okay, this is supposed to be new. Like why didn't you just I don't know have somebody narrate it or something, or come up with something creative other than like I'm going to show you cutscenes that have been slashed together from like the game. But anyways, it keeps going with that, and then like Ignis is going through this town. He gets separated from the group, which I'm surprised no one's asking for. Where's the Gladio and Prompto DLC? While Ignis was off on his adventure, because they're doing something this whole time too. But he's going through this town, and like he's just trying to get the Noctis, which I guess makes sense. But he keeps running into all these like Magitech armor unit soldiers, and he's having to battle his way through it. And I don't know, dude. It just like it. First off, like the gameplay to me was just it was just boring, dude. You just hold circle, like literally don't do anything else but hold circle, and he zips around the screen, like just killing everybody.
It's basically a more swift Noctis.
Yeah.
It has like the elemental blades that you use, and they have like different particular purposes. But the problem with that system was that you can just put the Blizzard ones on, and you can just like destroy not only one, enemy. You can destroy multiple enemies at once with it. It's so ridiculously OP that like in this short 2-hour campaign, you're just left to just be using that the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. There were a few bosses that I had to use a little bit of strategy where I would have to like hold the dodge button when I saw them attacking, and then when they stopped, once they got done with the attack, I would just go back to hitting them. And that was primarily Ravis and Arden. Those were the two bosses where I found that I would have to do that. Also with those big like I don't know what you call them, but those huge robot Magitech things that shoot missiles at you. I had to use the dodge button for those missiles, which it's really strange that you can use a dodge button for missiles, but whatever. So, but yeah, it was like you said, it was like way too overpowered. So it was just like, I was just like, God, I'm just holding the circle button, waiting for a freaking cutscene. But I mean, the music during all this is, I thought was really, really good. So
I think I heard that they got the Chrono Trigger composer to help with it.
Yeah, I know he did the main theme or whatever, like, but I kind of got the vibe like he did the whole thing, which, if that's the case, he should, I can't believe I can't remember his name, but he should do every Final Fantasy, because if Nobuo's not going to do it, because he did a good job. I mean, there was one song where I had like a little piano lick that would like almost felt like I was watching like a Highlander movie or something, but other than that, like, it was really good. So I think the music was pretty good, but I had issues with the gameplay. But I think the main thing, though, just with the story that just from the beginning that kind of felt odd to me was the tone didn't seem appropriate. Every time we got to engage with any of the people that like lived in the city, they seemed unusually stiff, and like they didn't seem like they were comprehending what was going on. I mean, I felt like they should be freaking out. Their city is like literally underwater, and they're just like, "Oh, make sure you come back alive." Like, why do you care about this guy you don't know? Like your townspeople are like being murdered, like genocide levels. There's an Aeon or a god that's like right outside your city that's like smashing buildings, and you're sitting there worried about Ignis. Like, oh, make sure you come back. It's just really weird, but I don't know. And then they introduced this whole plot element with this the Caligo or something like that. I don't know. He's some general from the Empire. I guess he was mad at Ravis. So I don't know. It was that whole part was awkward. Did you understand that really? I guess he was just mad with the way Ravis talked to him.
Essentially, I think you rounded up just fine. I'm sure there might be some lore nut with 15 that will be like, well, actually, this is what was happening between them, between these two. But we don't. Just looking at it from the outside, I didn't see any like real build up between the two, so it was just kind of random. Like this is just a problem with it, that the main game you don't get to see anything from the villains. Really, you got like some really small tidbits in there, but we never really got to know the villains in 15 very well. So when you have cutscenes like this that happen, you don't feel anything between them because you don't know how they are when they're not just showing up when the heroes are around. They're not establishing it, and because of that, I can't grow to like or hate these two.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like, basically, Ravis says, "Hey, make sure you pull back because we don't want to kill the Oracle, the King yet. We have to get the ring, and if you kill them, like it's just gonna make things more complicated." And Caligo's just like, "Oh, well, you think that's wise or something like that?" And Ravis says something along the lines, or no, Caligo says like, "Hey, we want the ring for ourselves, right?" And Ravis is just like, "No, how do you think I got this arm? Like, I put the ring on." It showed another flashback from Kingsglaive, which I hate. They couldn't just make another cutscene.
It's like, is the arm not like indication at all that we need to approach this more carefully?
Yeah. So, and then like Caligo, like when Ravis walks away, apparently he didn't have enough balls to say it to Ravis's face, but he was just like, "Oh yeah, like you want to talk to me like that? I'll show you." And then he decides in that moment he's gonna kill Ravis and like go against his orders. I don't know, it's really strange, but I guess that gives us, or that sets up the circumstances for Caligo to join Ignis, because later it cuts to Ignis and he's being surrounded by soldiers, and Ravis comes out of nowhere and stabs one of the soldiers and is like, "I'm not after you, I'm after to save the Oracle," or whatever. And that's when Ravis joins the party. I don't know, was it just me, or did they make Ravis's voice for this entire thing sound extremely sinister? Like every time he talked almost, it seemed like he was just like very, very evil. He was always like, "We're going to go after them and it's going to be great," or something. I don't know, it just didn't fit. Like I was just like, "What are you doing, dude?" Like
he's more of royalty. So having kind of like an upperclassman tone to people who may consider lower than them, it may just come off that way, just like a nobleman type of personality.
I actually like that explanation, because I was trying to find because to me I was like, okay, you had this possibility with this character where they could have, they seemed evil, but they had their own motivations, and we were going to understand their motivations, and it was going to be like a multifaceted thing. And instead, this guy's just like another like typical like bad guy. But I like that explanation, so that'll work for me. But basically after that, they're like traveling together, and like Ravis is like, and them are doing like this Horizon Zero Dawn thing where they're like teaming up to like take down machines, which is weird. But he's just, I don't know, he's just basically filling Ignis in on what happened in Kingsglaive, which is odd. And by the time Ravis and Ignis get to Noctis, and let me know if I'm skipping past anything you want to bring up, but once we get to Noctis, you can see Luna is dead, basically, and Ravis is like freaking out, and he decides that he's just going to kill Noctis for some unknown, I guess because she died trying to save him. But he says the most odd line I've heard in this game.
Like, doesn't Ravis like blame him for Luna's death? Like, just straight out goes for him, not just like just angry and just take it out on him.
Yeah, apparently that makes sense to me to a degree, because Luna, like this whole time, was obsessed with Noctis and fulfilling her role or her prophecy or whatever, and protecting Luna or Noctis, right? So I think Ravis knew that, like in the prophecy or whatever, that she was going to lose her life if she did this. So I think he was kind of upset with Noctis, which makes sense. But I don't. He says, like right before he pulls his sword out, he says, "The Lucians took my mother, and then they took my sister. I should have done this a long time ago." And he pulls out his sword. And I'm sitting there looking at it like, well, when I watch Kingsglaive, pretty sure the Empire, that general, he like gutted your mom like right in front of you. In fact, like the sword almost like hit him in the face because it like went all the way through his mom's stomach and came out and like almost hit Ravis in the face. So I feel like he's like very, very confused.
Yeah, the Empire did some strong manipulation when he was a kid. He's always been conflicted about it, but the Empire was pretty much trying to tell him. I don't remember exactly where it's from. I don't remember from the Kingsglaive or the main game itself, but they were like, Lucius is the reason this all happened to begin with. If Lucius wasn't around, then we wouldn't act the way we did, and strong manipulation techniques, just made him under that mindset, probably to keep better manage of what's the place called, like Tenebrae, I believe, called is where him and Luna live. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just the basis of that. And there are I remember some missing cutscene where Luna was talking to Ravis, and he's becoming conflicted again from that. So he's been conflicted about the whole thing. It's like he's working for the Empire, but he's trying to perform a noble goal from it.
Mm-hmm. So basically what I got from it, and he delved into this a little bit also in this episode, is that he basically thought that he could take Noctis's place and that his sister wouldn't die. That's basically what he thought. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess that makes sense, but they could have done the motivations a little bit better. But I don't know. Ravis and Ignis get in this big fight because Ignis obviously tries to stop Ravis from killing Noctis, and Ignis is trying to explain to him while they're fighting that the Empire is the reason for all of his pain with the people dying in his life, and that he should help Noctis instead of killing him because that's what his sister would have wanted. Yeah, I mean, whatever. That whole thing, I'm fine with that. They fought. It seems kind of weird that Ignis was able to take him on one by one, but whatever. Ignis was able to defeat him, basically. And all of a sudden, Arden shows up. And things get wild. So Arden's about to stab Noctis for some reason. And Ignis decides he's going to put on the ring. And he puts on the ring. He starts screaming. I thought we were going to get to see the Kings of Lucius. Right? But... Go ahead.
Oh, I was just confirming it. It's when you put the ring on, and if you're not of the royal bloodline shown by Kingsglaive, that you will get the consequences from it. Like Ravis had his arm gone, and when the main character of Kingsglaive, what was his name again? Styx, something like that, or
Nyx, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I keep forgetting his name all the time. But anyways, they were going to kill him right off the bat, the previous kings, and he made a deal. And he was like, look, if you just let me have it for tonight, you can wipe me off and I'll save Insomnia. And they let him. And
we actually saw Regis in that scene as well. Regis in the afterlife, basically. And he vouched for Nyx, and he was like, hey, no, I know this man. He's of a good heart. He's of a good soul or whatever. And he's helping our line. Like, you need to do this. So, I mean, I thought for sure that would have been awesome if when he put that ring on, Ignis got to go before Regis and everything. We got to see Regis again. That would have been sick, But instead, Ignis just screams, and then all of a sudden he goes basically Super Saiyan. It was weird. He puts the ring on, and all of a sudden his hair's different, and he's got some blue stuff around his eyes, and he's got red eyes. And I don't know. It was kind of cool when Arden was like, "Oh," and he all of a sudden appears in front of Ignis, excited, I guess they granted you the power or whatever. And that's when you fight Arden. Now, after he defeats Arden, apparently after that, that's when the ring or whatever makes Ignis go blind, and that's pretty much the end of the canon DLC. That's if you chose to fight, right? Now, my own opinion with the canon part right there was I thought there was going to be a lot more regarding how he went blind. It seems strange to me that that's why he went blind, because I'm not quite sure he had to go blind, because I'm not sure that Arden was actually going to stab Noctis, and Arden only stopped fighting Ignis once the power of the ring left him and he was back to his normal self. Then Arden was just like, all right, well, I guess I'll just leave now. I'm like, well, why didn't you just go up to Noctis and then stab him?
The problem I have with Ignis going blind in general is that I don't really feel like they did much with it. They had the point in the second half of the story where we're trying to guide him, and he is he's trying to overcome like his blindness, or like how he can still be useful to the party, which I thought that was great. I was like, this is a new dynamic to their structure, and they have to learn to deal with it. And I thought that was really great. But they didn't really do much with it afterwards. It's mostly because, we just abruptly just went to the next part of the story, and, him overcoming his blindness isn't just developed further beyond there. They're just finding out, like, oh, we can have other uses for him. And I don't feel like Ignis got any solid conclusion from that. We just kind of jumped 10 years later, and, he's just used to being a blind fighter. It's like, okay, well, apparently he overcame something years ago that we never got to see, so that's a thing.
Well, and not to mention, too, like, when he went blind initially in the game, he was almost depressed because, remember, he's trying to run with the party, he can't catch up, he's like, oh, just leave me behind, I'm useless or whatever. And I kind of got the impression that, like, some accident occurred and he was still trying to deal with it. Whereas in this DLC, you can see he chose basically to go blind. And that, technically, from the way the game presents it, that his decision is what saved Noctis's life. So I don't know why he's, like, so depressed that he can't, help Noctis. It's like, dude, you just saved the guy's life. But one thing that you pointed out to me in a message that I think was a very good point is they bring in this thing, or this whole element where Ignis is getting these flashbacks, or not flashbacks, like premonitions or like visions of the future. And he's seeing Noctis, and he's seeing that he has to be killed or whatever to end the world from darkness. And I think you pointed out that this is a major spoiler. So if this was supposed to be like in the main game or whatever, which I know Square's going to say it's not supposed to be, it's supposed to be DLC, but that's a major spoiler. Like, you really cannot play this until you've beaten the game,
More like, no matter if you go through like the non-canon version of it or the canon version of it, it's still in the same. It's just kind of interesting among itself for Noctis still has to sacrifice himself at the end, regardless if Arden is around or not. I have a problem with the whole choosing your thing to begin with, because the game isn't ever built for making strong choices like that. So it just feels like a really random thing they just thought of at the end, and it feels messy to me because of that. I understand it's like Episode Ignis, it's its own thing and stuff like that, but it feels so weird to the series. It feels like I'm just playing completely different games sometimes, which can be a good and bad thing, but it just doesn't feel focused.
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't like the fact that they have like multiple endings now either, because I didn't like that. But yeah, if you do choose to join Arden, Noctis, or I keep saying Noctis, but Ignis goes on this journey with Arden, and Arden basically tells you all sorts of stuff, like you were saying earlier, that his brother was the person that kicked him out of the kingdom or whatever, or like took his opportunity to be king, and all these like juicy details. But Ignis still puts on the ring, but apparently if he puts on the ring, then he doesn't have to go blind. And also, for some reason, Ravis is not killed in the Empire if that happens. And he actually just gives the sword of Noctis' sword to Noctis when he arrives in Insomnia near the end of the game. He's got like a little white beard and stuff. And
that's how you know it's
I don't
10
know.
years later. He's got a beard.
Yeah, but it seems weird that like, yeah. Well, no, what's weird is Ravis has this like white beard, but it doesn't look like a white beard, his hair's white. He makes it look like he's like this like super old man, and
he doesn't look older. He
really,
looks like he just got a
like some little like goatee from Walmart. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. It's weird, but I guess apparently if you choose join Arden, I forgot to mention that Ignis does fight Arden when he puts on the ring, and apparently, from what I got from it, is he actually defeated Arden. So Noctis, he didn't have to fight Arden. I guess it is really strange, but there's some things I like about that ending. I can see why some people like it, and I think it adds a little bit of nuance to maybe certain scenes in the game that Ignis knew Noctis was going to go, or Noctis was going to have to die for this. So perhaps that's why he didn't want to say anything. I can kind of get where they're trying to go with it, but in general, like you were saying, to me, this whole thing just felt cheap and poorly put together, and I feel like it just didn't really answer what I wanted to answer, and some of the questions I did have regarding like how did Ignis go blind, it gave me a method of how he went blind that was very unfulfilling to me.
Yeah, it's. I'm glad there's some decent answer to it. Like he put the ring of Lucius on him, which I think is a cool thing. Like he's kind of making the same. What's his name? Nyx. the similar choice of Nyx that he's willing to sacrifice himself to save Noctis, which is a nice touch because we get some tidbits of him and his relationship with Noctis throughout his life, which is very nice. We know that Ignis is very dedicated to him and Regis and the Kingdom of Lucius, and he's willing to do anything for him, and including putting the ring on, which is nice. It still feels off that Ignis is not willing to talk to Noctis about this. They were like, give context to the situation that just happened to him after his whole episode that just happened to Noctis. And like the whole just thing of him becoming blind, it's just there's just strong miscommunication or no communication between the Ignis and Noctis on it, and it just feels off, and you just keep questioning yourself, why is this a thing?
Not to mention, if let's say that he didn't want to bring that up because he was afraid that Noctis would ask more questions, and he didn't want to tell him like, hey, I just saw some vision and you're going to have to die for this. Or for some reason, we are all like 10 years older. I'm still trying to figure that piece of the puzzle out. Maybe there's some time. I don't know. So maybe that's why, but if all that's why, there's no reason why Ignis never brought up Ravis, right?
I think they could have at least gone in the direction that Noctis wants to know what happened to Ignis, but Ignis is refusing to tell him. That could create a different dynamic, which would be perfectly fine. It's just they don't bring it up. Period. It's like Ignis don't have to make an excuse. Noctis never asked.
Yeah, well, or they never brought up Ravis, though. I thought that was especially strange because, the entire Gladio DLC was influenced by an action with Ravis, and Gladio literally walks up to Ravis and, they don't really say anything. And, I don't know, for the rest of the game, no one ever brings up that, Ravis is on our side now, so I thought that was strange as well. So, you know what this feels like? This feels like when the game came out, they knew Ignis was going blind, but they weren't quite sure how they were going to do it. And after a year, they were like, oh, let's just do this. And this didn't feel like this was pre-planned, at least the story. So it feels very poorly put together. I'm especially surprised that they didn't give you more time with Gladio and Prompto, because I'm sure somebody's going to point out that, hey, this whole time that we spent with Ignis was missing from the game, but this whole time Gladio and Prompto were off doing something. What were they doing? I'm I'm sure there's going to be some people saying that. So I hope they don't come out with another DLC with that, because
I will say the episode as
that'll
a
make me
whole, if you buy it by itself, as much as I'm against the DLC, the structure of this, particularly like taking main story vital bits out, if you were to purchase Episode Ignis individually by itself, it's worth it. If you really want to know some story tidbits about 15, its execution is still not very solid. It's a lot left to be desired, but if you're someone who does enjoy 15, and you want to know more about it, I think this episode out of all of them is going to give you the most context out of the DLCs.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I felt, yeah. I mean, hey, if you got $5 to spend, at the end of the day, I got to remember that it only costs $5. So it's not like people are spending $50 on this. But and I think that's the other issue with it just being DLC is if it was in the main game, I think it would have been a little more polished. It's pretty rough around the edges, like we were talking about, but it's got some great music. It's got some cool like effects and such in the battle system, but it's not anything special. So, I mean, that's like pretty much my thoughts on the whole thing. Did you have any other thoughts with this episode, Ignis?
It's just hasn't changed at all my mindset about FF15 and just, in my opinion, how much of a horrible mess the game is. And Episode Ignis doesn't do anything to make that better. I'm glad there is some context to it, to some things, even though it's in non-canon form. But, I mean, I guess the information is still canon, but, how you receive it is through a non-canon story. But, again, if you like 15 and you really want to know some interesting lore tidbits, it's $5. It's worth it. And it's worth picking up on that notion. Again, I am 100% against taking main story content out. I'm 100% for adding additional DLC on top of a completed game. But, we've talked about it before, the whole how they should have structured it in previous episodes.
Well, the only DLC that's come out where I feel like it was appropriate for it to be DLC, I didn't like the way it was executed in the game, but the Gladio DLC, if you look at the story that actually occurred, not the way they sold it, where Gladio just comes back with a scar and he's like, that whole thing was awkward. But with the actual thing that happened, like I'm gonna go fight Gilgamesh, that seems like a perfect DLC for Final Fantasy 15 because that didn't really help the plot at all. Like I didn't learn anything else really that was really crucial. All I learned about was Core, basically, who doesn't really have a point in the whole game. So I mean, that type of stuff like would have been perfect for DLC. So yeah, I agree with you. Like this whole like how did Ignis go blind and all that. Like this is not good. But for $5, I mean, they honestly Square could have like put a $10 or $15 price tag on this and people still would have bought it. So. I mean, I guess at the very least, it only costs $5. So,
yeah, just $5 on that.
Yeah, less than McDonald's. So, but other than that, the only other thing I think we should bring up before we draw this episode to a close is next game we're going to be covering. Eric, do you want to tell them what that is?
It's one of my favorite Western RPGs. It is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic.
Boom. So, hey, we're going to be reviewing that, and I think in about a week. We're trying to get back to where we review games on the first of every month, or around there anyways. So, I'm going to try to get through that, because I've never played that before. It's supposed to be really good, though. I was looking it up, and I'm going to try to get through that in the next week or so. I got some time off, so it should be fairly easy. And it's only $4 on Steam right now, or $3.96. So if you've never played it and you want to download it and give us your thoughts, go ahead and jump on Steam. It's real cheap. It's only like 20 hours, right? 15, 20 hours if you do just the bare minimum.
If you do like one playthrough of it, it's a game that encourages you to do multiple playthroughs. But if you just want to do one playthrough of it, It's roughly a 20-hour game your first time through.
Perfect. So, I'm looking forward to that. I know a couple people in the comments, they were saying like, oh, it'd be cool if we could do some, they're throwing out games like Dragon Quest 8 and such. So I know we're definitely going to get to that game. I want to get to that game. So we'll be getting to that probably in sometime this next year. So, but other than that, we're planning on doing Star Wars. And then after that, we're going to try to do Secret of Mana in February, but we'll see how that plays out. But
yeah, we have the Secret of Mana remake coming, so I'll probably play that also, and it'd be pretty cool to do a comparison with it. So we'll see what they did better, did worse, or the remake is beautiful, or the remake is garbage. Who knows?
Yeah, because that's kind of what I was thinking. I was like, I'm going to run through the old one again because it's been a couple of years since I've gone completely through it. I want it real fresh in my mind, and I'm going to jump right into that remake, and I'm going to play that one and see if it's just garbage or if it's pretty good. So it'll be good, man. I'm excited. But other than that, if you're listening to this on iTunes or whatever podcatcher you have, you can find us on YouTube. You can check us out there at Phoenix Edge RPG Podcast. Just type that in, and we should be like within the first couple of things that pop up. And you can check our video version of this podcast out. And if you want to listen to the audio only version, maybe you're doing some traveling over these holidays and you just want to listen to it, you can't watch it, just go ahead and go onto iTunes or any other podcatcher. If you have an Android phone, you can type in on Google Play, just type in podcasts, and you should see all sorts of podcatchers. We should be on almost every single one. I don't know how they pull up our feed, but they naturally just pull up from iTunes. So we should be on all of them, and you can listen to the audio-only version of this podcast as well. But with that said, I think we're good. So we'll catch you all next week, and have a good Christmas.
Yep. See you guys later.
All right. Stay easy.